Article 31, Statistics and Data Collection. States parties undertake to collect appropriate information, including statistical and research data, to enable them to formulate and implement policies to give effect to the present convention. The process of collecting and maintaining the information shall comply with legally established safeguards, including legislation on data protection to ensure confidentiality and respect for the privacy of persons with disabilities. Comply with internationally accepted norms to protect human rights and fundamental freedoms and ethical principles in the collection and use of statistics. The information collected in accordance with this article shall be disaggregated as appropriate and used to help assess the implementation of states parties' obligations under the present convention and to identify and address the barriers faced by persons with disabilities in exercising their rights. States parties shall assume responsibility for the dissemination of these statistics and ensure their accessibility to persons with disabilities and others. Article 32, International Cooperation. States parties recognize the importance of international cooperation and its promotion in support of national efforts for the realization of the purpose and objectives of the present convention, and will undertake appropriate and effective measures in this regard between and among states and as appropriate in partnership with relevant international and regional organizations in civil society, in particular organizations of persons with disabilities. Such measures could include, inter alia, ensuring that international cooperation, including international development programs, is inclusive of and accessible to persons with disabilities, facilitating and supporting capacity building, including through the exchange of sharing information, experiences, training programs, and best practices, facilitating cooperation in research and access to scientific and technical knowledge, providing as appropriate technical and economic assistance, including by facilitating access to and sharing of accessible and assistive technologies, and through the transfer of technologies. The provisions of this article are without prejudice to the obligations of each state party to fulfill its obligation under the present convention. Article 33, National Implementation and Monitoring. States parties, in accordance with their system of organization, shall designate one or more focal points within government for matters relating to the implementation of the present convention, and shall give due consideration to the establishment or designation of a coordination mechanism within government to facilitate related action in different sectors and at different levels. States parties shall, in accordance with their legal and administrative systems, maintain, strengthen, designate, and establish within the state party a framework including one or more independent mechanisms as appropriate to promote, protect, and monitor implementation of the present convention. When designating or establishing such mechanism, the state parties shall take into account the principles relating to the states and functioning of national institutions for protection and promotion of human rights. Civil society, in particular persons with disabilities and their representative organizations, shall be involved and participate fully in the monitoring process. Article 34, Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. There shall be established a Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, hereinafter referred to as the Committee, which shall carry out the functions hereinafter provided. The Committee shall consist, at the time of entry into force of the present convention, of 12 experts. After an additional 60 ratifications or accessions to the convention, the membership of the Committee shall increase by 6 members, attaining a maximum number of 18 members. The members of the committee shall serve in their personal capacity and shall be of high moral standing and recognized competence and experience in the fields covered by the present convention. When nominating their candidates, states parties are invited to give due consideration to the provisions set out in Article 4, Paragraph 3 of the present convention. The members of the committee shall be elected by states parties, consideration being given to equitable geographical distribution, representation of the different forms of civilization, and of the principal legal systems, balanced gender representation, and participation of experts with disabilities. The members of the committee shall be elected by secret ballot from a list of persons nominated by the states parties from among their nationals at meetings of the Conference of States Parties. At those meetings, for which 2/3 of states parties shall constitute a quorum, the persons elected in the committee shall be those who obtain the largest numbers of votes and an absolute majority of the votes of the representatives of states parties present and voting. The initial election shall be held no later than 6 months after the date of entry into force of the present convention. At least 4 months before the date of each election, the Secretary General of the United Nations shall address a letter to the states parties inviting them to submit the nominations within 2 months. The Secretary General shall subsequently prepare a list in alphabetical order of all persons thus nominated, indicating the states parties which have nominated them, and shall submit it to the states parties to the present convention. The members of the committee shall be elected for a term of 4 years. They shall be eligible for re-election once. However, the term of 6 of the members elected at the first election shall expire at the end of 2 years. Immediately after the first election, the names of these 6 members shall be chosen by lot by the chairperson of the meeting referred to in paragraph 5 of this article. The election of the 6 additional members of the committee shall be held on the occasion of regular elections in accordance with the relevant provisions of this article. If a member of the committee dies or resigns or declares that for any other cause she or he can no longer perform her or his duties, the states party which nominated the member shall appoint another expert possessing the qualifications and meeting the requirements set out in the relevant provisions of this article to serve for the remainder of the term. The committee shall establish its own rules of procedure. The Secretary General of the United Nations shall provide the necessary staff and facilities for the effective performance of the functions of the committee under the present convention and shall convene its initial meeting. With the approval of the General Assembly of the United Nations, the members of the committee established under the present convention shall receive emoluments from United Nations resources on such terms and conditions as the Assembly may decide, having regard to the importance of the committee's responsibilities. The members of the committee shall be entitled to the facilities, privileges, and immunities of experts on mission for the United Nations as laid down in the relevant sections on the Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations. Article 35. Reports by states parties. Each state party shall submit to the committee through the Secretary General of the United Nations a comprehensive report on measures taken to give effect to the obligations under the present convention and on the progress made in that regard within 2 years after the entry into force of the present convention for the state party concerned. Thereafter, states parties shall submit subsequent reports at least every 4 years, and further whenever the committee so requests. The committee shall decide any guidelines applicable to the content of the reports. A state party which has submitted a comprehensive initial report to the committee need not, in its subsequent reports, repeat information previously provided. When preparing reports to the committee, states parties are invited to consider doing so in an open and transparent process, and to give due consideration to the provisions set out in Article 4, Paragraph 3 of the present Convention. Reports may indicate factors and difficulties affecting the degree of fulfillment of obligations under the present Convention.